Year 1313. Early in the morning on a Wednesday at the beginning of the year, Lisa decided to make soup with onions and potatoes for her big family. She was pregnant again with a baby her husband Cedric didn't want. He thought they had enough on their plate already. But the biggest reason why he didn't want Lisa to be pregnant was because of the consequences that could occur during labor. Basically, Lisa could die, so their relationship was not the best. But they couldn't just think about their future baby. They had 2 toddlers that needed attention and care, Lily and Adam. Adam would soon turn into a child, which meant that he could start taking care of himself, which Cedric had a hard time accepting. Adam was Cedric's favorite child, but he never said that. Besides the drama between Cedric and Lisa and Adam's future birthday, year 1313 was very chill. The days looked pretty much the same, taking care of the animals and cleaning up their poop. Cedric's potato plants looked amazing and the family survived quite well with the amount of food they had. Cedric built a little place for the kids to play around, which they used all the time. My favorite sim, Rosemary, enjoyed the time she had left on the farm. In 5 years, she would move away from her family to her future husband, Joffrey. They would get kids and maybe move to France. A very terrifying thought for Rosemary. At this point, I was also so done with winter. Thankfully, there were only some days left, but Sims can't do anything interesting during winter. Just saying. Something that was very cute was Christopher's many attempts to ride Kentucky. He finally managed and went for a relaxed ride. Cedric had to follow him though, just in case something would happen. Lisa tried teaching her youngest son some manners, but Adam only listened to his father, which made Lisa frustrated and she left him. Cookie is also very sick, but during this time there was not much to do. Poor cat. Cedric's younger brother Edward came for a visit and they talked mostly about the long winter they had been going through and Edward's relationship with Deborah. Everything seemed fine. Lisa's brother also came for a visit and received some nice food. All the people and the heavy belly made Lisa sleepy and she had to nap for a while. On Adam's birthday, Lisa's baby decided that it was time to come out. Lisa survived through the labor, but the baby didn't. It was a little girl who unfortunately came out as a stillborn. Cedric hugged his wife after the incident and apologized for his bad behavior. He told her that he was scared that something would happen to her if she continued going through several labors. But Lisa said that she was fine and didn't care if she got more children. That was what she wanted. Cedric actually accepted his wife this time and they continued to woohoo with each other. He couldn't live without her anymore. Then it was time for Adam's birthday and damn, he turned out good as a child. Cedric obviously took care of his son as always, giving him the best advice to become a real man. When it turned to night, Adam went to bed hoping that his father would live until Adam was old enough to move away. He loved his father more than anything and didn't know if he was capable of continuing if Cedric passed away. The same night, Cookie became worse and vomited in the whole kitchen, so Cedric stayed up the whole night trying to help Cookie the best he could. Year 1314. In the beginning of year 1314, Cedric and Lisa decided that Cookie no longer could stay in the family. He was too sick and would probably not live much longer. Rosemary was so sad that her beloved little cat was now gone. Cedric buried Cookie behind a shed and life went on. Cedric decided to visit his brother Edward together with Rosemary and Harvey. There, they could meet their cousins Kyler and Jasper. Hopefully, Rosemary wouldn't think too much about Cookie while being there. Kyler was the same age as Rosemary, and Jasper was 3 months younger than Harvey. They were pretty good friends. Rosemary didn't enjoy talking to her cousins today. She was too sad. Cedric, Edward, and Kyler discussed who he would want to marry in the future. Cedric was the one deciding Kyler's future. Edward had once been a bad father, and the church had decided to let Cedric take over the reins of Edward's son. He was okay with that. Harvey asked if they could go to the village and play there instead, which all of the kids wanted, except for Rosemary, but Cedric thought it was a good idea to come out a bit. So she followed her brother. Back home, Cedric and Lisa made some more love together because they had a feeling, I guess. All the kids were so tired after spending the whole day at the village, so they slept for a long time. Since Lisa is very fertile for some reason, she once again expected a baby. Oh my god, Lisa, how many kids are you going to have? When all of the kids finally had woken up, Lisa served some nice food for them. Daniel and his family also came for a visit. This time with Jake. He had grown so much and was already a child. I have the lifespan for non-playable Sims on normal, and that's why those Sims grow up faster than my Sims. So Lily should actually be older than Jake, but anyway. Cedric realized, with all the Sims in the house, that they probably should expand the house in the future. Especially with a new family member on the way. Spring was here and finally Cedric could start growing some plants. Rosemary had moved on from Cookie's death and enjoyed her life once again. Now she couldn't wait to move away, start her own life and be the woman she was designed to be. Christopher and Cedric talked with each other about the future and that Christopher probably wanted a big horse ranch in the future. Cedric laughed. It feels like when spring came, all my Sims became happier, and they actually started being with each other again. Lisa played with Lily, for example, something she had never done. For some reason, Cedric's plants didn't grow, and when he looked at the soil, it was bad. They had food for this year, but next year was unsure. And why this happened is actually because of what's coming next. Year 1315, the Great Famine. The Great Famine happened between year 1315 to year 1317, where most of Europe was affected. Everything started with bad weather and crops started to fail. But that was not the only problem. Animals were dying from weakened cattle, which means that the animals were unable to stand, caused by milk fever, infections, or extreme malnutrition. Around 10 to 25% of the population died because of the Great Famine. So what will happen with my Sims? Well, during this year, Cedric can't grow any crops and he has to sell all of the animals except for Kentucky, since the food amount is so low. Lisa can only feed her family once a day, and the worst part, some of my Sims will die of starvation. The question is, how many? The year started pretty okay. Rosemary had grown and was now 13 years old, soon ready to move away together with a future husband. She looked amazing, and the other fathers asked Cedric if their sons could marry Rosemary, but Cedric always said no. It was nice having an adult in the family. Yes, she was still a kid, but technically she could legally get married and produce children right now. So I'm gonna call her an adult. Not having food for a free meal day was hard for Lisa. Only serving one meal per day was not what she wanted. Everyone was hungry and Lisa had a baby in her that wanted food as well. Lisa was so tired from her pregnancy, so it was nice having Rosemary taking care of Lily. They had such a good relationship together. Rosemary had always wanted a sister, and now when she had one, she tried spending as much time as possible. She wanted Lily to remember her when she moved away to France. Lisa gave her family food in the middle of the day. They had to stay hungry early in the morning and late at night, but when they needed all their strength in the middle of the day, she gave them food. And the children literally ran to the little pot of soup or any prepared meal she had made. Rosemary also spent some time with Kentucky. She hadn't been that interested in horses before, but now when they didn't have any chickens or cows, it was nice being with him, and she took him for a ride as well. It was scary. In the middle of the chaos, Lisa's baby decided that it was time to get born. Or was it Lisa's body, because when the baby was out, it appeared to be a stillborn again. Lisa felt bad for bringing a stillborn again, but delighted at the same time. They didn't have food for another child, and maybe God had helped her. She at least believed that was the case. Rosemary felt bad for her mother and prayed every night that her family would be safe. I don't know if her parents kept it safe though. Talking about woohoo, Rosemary had many questions about the future and how nervous she was that she wasn't good enough for Joffrey. But Lisa reassured her that she was going to be perfect. She was sweet, kind, and very mature. Nothing could go wrong. Unfortunately, our first death would happen this year. Lily's little body couldn't handle the lack of food, and she starved. You can probably guess how sad Rosemary got when she heard the news from her mother. She didn't show it here, but trust me, She cried all the time. It was scary for all the kids now that one of them had died because of the short amount of food. Lisa tried making better meals so they wouldn't stay hungry, but they had nothing. They were so poor that they soon would have to live on gruel. Cedric sometimes fought for himself that this was the beginning of the end to his family and legacy. Rosemary and Joffrey started meeting each other more now when they soon would get married. Joffrey had been such a nice guy every time they had met, but this time he pushed her to be intimate and he kissed her. Rosemary didn't know what to say or do. Her mother hadn't told her anything about this. Joffrey said that this was the beginning of a wonderful marriage, but Rosemary felt more unsure about this decision. She couldn't tell her parents about this day. Never. She had promised her father to marry Joffrey, but after this day, she really didn't want to. I'm talking a lot about Rosemary in this series, but that's because she is right now the most interesting. Sorry about that. Anyway, Rosemary wasn't the only one that had grown up into a teen. Edward's son Kyler was also old enough to get married soon. Cedric had a girl ready for him when it was time. But no one knew that Kyler actually already had a girl that waited patiently for him. I'm going to talk about that on my Side Holds recap video coming soon. Edward was also visiting the farm and his family were starving like Cedric's family. At least Edward and Deborah's marriage was good. I love to complain about The Sims 4, and something that's really disturbing in this is that phases that the kids can go through is hilarious. I mean, who dressed themselves as a red bear with a strawberry on his belly in the medieval times? No one. That's right, no one. To be honest, no kid would do that today either. Or maybe I'm grumpy. It's just weird that it exists in this game, okay? Lisa prayed for her family, her legacy, and her unborn baby. Yes, she was pregnant again. Sadly, praying couldn't help her anymore. Cedric had accidentally started a fire in the house, and now he stood in flames, trying to get out. He tried saving his children, but Christopher was also on fire, and both of them died in the flames. The house burned down to the ground and left Lisa, Rosemary, Harvey, Adam, and Lisa's unborn baby without a house. This was not good. The family tried to find any furniture left from the fire and moved it to the barn, their new house. Lisa had lost her husband, her child. She was devastated and ready to give up, but she couldn't. She had 3 more kids that needed her. On the table, a bowl of gruel stood. They had nothing left, but everyone tried staying positive. Rosemary noticed in Kentucky that he was sad. He probably knew that his favorite person, Christopher, never would come back. Lisa wanted to give Cedric and Christopher a proper funeral by inviting everyone she knew. She went to her brother together with the whole family, and when they arrived, they saw April and her son Jake laying outside of the house. Daniel laid in the kitchen. They had all starved. Lisa couldn't speak. Rosemary dragged her mother out of the house, and together with her brothers, they tried moving the bodies. Lisa couldn't stop crying. Her life was gone. Her beloved brother was dead, and the life he had always wanted was now ruined. The family graveyard grew. Cedric, Christopher, April, Daniel, and Jake could now rest beside their family members. How could God do something like this? This year didn't end as any of us expected. Year 1316. After the previous year, everybody in the family was sad. Rosemary's father was gone. He wouldn't be at her wedding or meet any of his grandkids. He was healthy and still young. How could a small fire lead to such a terrible accident? Lisa would probably have to get remarried, something she really didn't want to. But living as a widow with 3 kids was not an easy task. She also waited for her unborn baby to come out. It wasn't long left. The family was hungry and exhausted. Lisa tried feeding Kentucky with anything she could get her hands on, but she didn't know how long it would last. They barely had food for themselves. How would they keep a horse fed? The family went to Edward to come away from all the sadness at home. It was nice for the children to meet their cousins. Kyler was the same age as Rosemary and one of the sweetest boys in the whole village. He missed his mother Estelle every day. His stepmother Deborah was okay. She had taken care of him his whole childhood, but she wasn't Estelle. Deborah was strict. Harvey and Adam sat and talked about everything that had happened. They were both scared that they would die as well. Adam missed his father. He didn't have the best relationship with his mother. Now, he had nobody. But it was nice talking to his older siblings. They understood him. Edward was devastated about his brother's death. He had lost so many important people in his life. A wife, a son, and a brother. If he could just give his brother one more hug, that was his only wish. Seeing the children felt better for him. All of them reminded him of Cedric. Harvey saw Edward as an extra father to him. Early in the morning, when Lisa was doing food for the family, her water broke. It was time to deliver the baby, without Cedric. It didn't feel the same. She was vulnerable and alone. Rosemary tried helping as much as she could, but Lisa cried and screamed for Cedric. A little baby girl was born, and Lisa didn't even want to see the little baby. So Rosemary took care of the little girl and named her Abby. She wanted to understand her mother for not wanting to be around the baby. But leaving such a beauty? How could anybody? Joffrey had come over to visit Rosemary. He was angry. Rosemary tried asking if something was wrong, but Joffrey didn't answer. He just took her hand and dragged her away from the farm. Rosemary didn't understand what he was doing. They weren't married yet, so she didn't know her future husband fully. Suddenly, he stopped and undressed her. Rosemary felt like she couldn't move while Joffrey touched her. When he was finished, he left her. She couldn't tell what had just happened. Everything happened so fast. She ran to the chapel and sat there for hours, asking herself if this was her life now. A husband that didn't talk to her. She couldn't understand what she had done to him. She had always tried being kind. Why did he treat her like a nobody? Lisa would never find out how a daughter was treated, which is sad. She would probably call off the wedding even if they technically were married now. But Rosemary never told her mother about this day. Not even a hint. The children grew older. Harvey was now a teen, ready to meet girls and find the one. Or the ones. Harvey was a playboy. He couldn't just be with one girl his whole life. That would be so boring. Rosemary started to dislike her brother when he grew older. Abby was a crybaby. She cried all the time, which made it hard for the family to sleep. But Rosemary didn't mind. She loved Abby and she treated her like her own. Harvey went outside almost every day meeting new people. He met a really nice guy who he hung out with a lot. He then went to Edward to ask if Kyler was home. But when he came to the house, Edward and Deborah stood outside, terrified to go into the house. Harvey didn't understand, so he went inside. In the kitchen, Kyler laid on the floor. He was barely breathing. Edward's family was also starving from the Great Famine, and Kyler's body couldn't handle the starvation much longer. Harvey sat beside Kyler and begged the gods to save him, but no one heard his prayers. Kyler was gone. Harvey took Kyler's body and begged Edward to go to the church. They buried him beside all the other graves, and Harvey cried together with Edward. Jasper had lost his big brother, his best friend. Harvey spent the whole night at the church. He couldn't go home and tell his mother that another child had died. He would lose it completely. At the farm, Rosemary had started to feel nauseous, and she had to pee more often than usually. You know when I said Lisa would never find out about what Joffrey did to Rosemary? Well, she would never get to know, but she saw on Rosemary that something was off, and her stomach started to grow, which was impossible since they literally starved every day. So Lisa thought her daughter had been sleeping with Joffrey before getting married because of love. She wanted to punish Rosemary, but at the same time, she kind of understood. She still remembered the love between her and Cedric. They had been sleeping with each other even if they weren't supposed to. Lisa wanted to ask Rosemary about the pregnancy, because it was pretty obvious that her daughter was pregnant. But she wanted to wait. Maybe Rosemary would tell her someday. Everyone would sooner or later notice the belly. A day later, Harvey screamed for Rosemary to come to the kitchen. Lisa had collapsed on the floor and passed out. Her stomach was hurting and she had a hard time breathing. Rosemary prayed beside her mother, but the luck was not on the Greenwoods' side. Lisa would go to heaven and reunite with her husband. It was up to Rosemary and Harvey now to keep the family alive. And Rosemary would soon give birth to her first baby. Without her mother. She was really scared, but also happy that she had her siblings who tried taking care of both her and Abby. Rosemary and Harvey didn't think they were old enough to take care of the whole farm by themselves, but they had to try. Year 1317. Rosemary's stomach had grown a lot now, and her brothers noticed that she was expecting a baby. All of them were dirty and hungry. There was zero food around, and Harvey worked day and night trying to find anything for them to eat. Rosemary was so skinny that she actually didn't think her baby would survive. They eventually had to sell Kentucky to keep themselves alive. Rosemary prayed that her dead brother Christopher would forgive her for selling his lovely horse. Rosemary then decided to visit Edward and ask if they had anything to eat. But sadly, his family starved just like hers. When she sat and talked to Deborah, Jasper started to scream. His tummy was hurting and he fell to the floor, just like Lisa did when she had starved for too long. Rosemary couldn't see another family member die. She didn't know if God would listen to her this time, but she had to try. Together with Deborah, they prayed, but just like the last time, no one listened. Edward's legacy was gone. The only one left was now Rosemary, Harvey, and Adam. But unfortunately, Rosemary couldn't continue the Greenwood legacy. Everything depended on her younger brothers. She mourned Jasper together with Deborah. Suddenly, Deborah asked Rosemary if she was pregnant. Rosemary didn't want her to tell anyone, but Deborah understood, because she was also expecting a baby. It wasn't supposed to happen, but Edward and her had once woohooed, and 2 weeks later she found out that she was pregnant. But she hadn't told Edward yet. Edward had heard Deborah's secret and confronted her. He wasn't angry. Actually, a little happy that his legacy may have changed after all. Rosemary started to think about the future and how hard it was to take care of the family and the farm with just her brother. So, she told Edward that she was pregnant too and how scared she was. She suggested that Edward and Deborah could move into the farm. They could help each other and none of them had to feel so alone. Edward talked to his wife and she thought it was a good idea, so they moved in. Edward and Deborah moved to the first floor at the barn, and Edward later decided that he would build a new main house next year. They couldn't stay in a barn forever. Then, it was Harvey's turn to pass out on the floor. But this time, Rosemary had enough. She couldn't see her best friend and brother die as well. She closed her eyes and screamed to the gods that they would listen this time. When she opened them again, Harvey had woken up. He was starving, but his heart was still beating. Rosemary had saved him. Harvey really thought that it was his time to die. Thankfully, it wasn't. After Rosemary had saved her little brother, her water broke. The baby was going to come out today, and her soon-to-be husband didn't know that she was pregnant. She had totally forgotten to tell him, and honestly, she didn't want to. Giving birth to a baby was not how she had imagined it. The pain was unbelievable, and at some point she thought the baby would never come out. The baby eventually came out, and it was a little girl. Rosemary was now even more scared. She loved her little baby girl, but telling Joffrey that she had been pregnant and that it was a daughter could make him angry. She wanted to give him a boy because boys meant legacy. She asked Edward what she was supposed to do. Edward saw that she was worried, and he didn't want to make it worse for poor little Rosemary, so he gave her 2 options. Take the kid to Joffrey and try to explain, or pretend like she had never been pregnant and leave the rest to Edward. He could say that it was a bastard baby from a woman Edward had been with. Rosemary didn't want to leave her newborn child, but she had no idea what Joffrey would do to her if she showed him the baby. Option 2 was the only way. Rosemary saw her daughter grow older, and in just some weeks, Rosemary would move away from her, never see her again. Edward thought it was for the best if Rosemary didn't grow a relationship with the baby, so he named her Ruby. Rosemary only fed her and then left her to Edward. When Deborah's baby was about to come out, she was so excited. She had once hated children, but now she lived together with Rosemary and her little siblings. She loved the thought of a family by herself. She gave birth to a son, and Edward was so delighted to hear the news. They named the boy Freddie. He was a tiny little baby who Edward hoped would survive. He missed Kyler and Jasper, but seeing his newborn baby reminded him of them, which made his heart whole again. At the end of the year, Rosemary and Joffrey got married. Joffrey was such a sweetheart at the wedding, but she knew that as soon as they were alone, he would change personality. It was too late to escape now. Rosemary packed the little stuff she had, said goodbye to her family, and together with Joffrey, she began her travel to France. Harvey was sad for days after Rosemary had moved away, and the sadness wouldn't stop, because the Great Famine wasn't finished yet. It took Abby a week after Rosemary had moved. No one could save her. And then, it took Edward. The only one God would listen to was Deborah, but the gods were not on her side and Edward died from starvation. Deborah hugged her baby and hoped for a life that Freddie would survive, so he at least could continue Edward's legacy. She saw her husband's eyes in Freddie. The year was soon ending and Harvey noticed that the soil became better. Maybe they could start growing some plants again. Maybe this nightmare is coming to an end. The Great Famine had been the worst period of his life, and now he had to take care of everything alone with his little brother and his sister's daughter. Deborah didn't know how long she could stay with Harvey until she had to find her own place. Maybe she would start up the orphanage again and help children. Harvey understood her, but obviously he was nervous about the future. How would he take care of the whole family by himself? First of all, he had to find a wife. Year 1318. Since it was only Harvey, Adam and Ruby left at the farm, everyone had to help. Adam really liked fishing, while Harvey tried to hunt down an animal. Little Ruby was too young to help. She often cried and wanted attention instead. Deborah was actually supposed to take Ruby with her, but Harvey couldn't let that happen. He wanted Ruby to stay with him. It was his sister's daughter, which meant that Ruby was his responsibility. Harvey bathed little Ruby, cuddled her, and took care of her like it was his own child. Do any of you remember Kate, the girl Harvey met when he was a child? The same Kate visited his farm. Harvey almost didn't recognize her when she came to him. She was still the same cute girl back when he met her the first time. Kate only lived with her mother. They were poor, just like Harvey was, and well, she had to get married, so she had asked Harvey if he knew anybody. Harvey hadn't been talking with anyone after almost his whole family had died. Maybe it was time to get to know some people again. Harvey had also started building up the main house. Since he was all alone now, it took longer than he had expected. Harvey went to church alone to mourn his dead parents when he saw a girl sitting on a bench. She had orange-colored hair and blue eyes. Harvey had never seen such a cute girl before. She even had freckles. The girl approached him and asked why he was staring. Harvey, nervous as he was, said that she was beautiful. And they clicked. Harvey told her everything that had happened the last few years, and he also got to know her name, Hannah Anderson. She had lost her parents in the Great Famine, just like Harvey, and that was something they could relate to. That was probably the reason why they clicked so well. Hannah was kind, and Harvey really needed someone to talk to right now. But she had to go, and left was Harvey with his feelings. He could barely look at the gravestones without crying his heart out, so he went home. Harvey started planting down some seeds in the farmland. He tried to remember everything that his father had taught him. Cedric always talked about how his father Jasper had been one of the best gardeners in the village. Harvey had never met his grandpa, but was inspired to be just as good as Jasper. But now, he didn't have much inspiration when everyone was gone. Something he really wanted to achieve before he died was to open up a little store in one of the houses that stood on the farm. That was Cedric's dream, and Harvey wanted to complete it. Eventually, the house at least got finished, and Harvey was so happy. He had changed some things with the house. For example, he had moved the door, and inside was now a beautiful kitchen and a fireplace, so his family could stay warm in the winter. There was a main bedroom for him and his future wife, and an open area for his future kids. He hoped nobody had to move to the barn. There was still a lot to do though, but that had to wait. Adam loved the new house and was really excited to explore it more. Harvey had started to feel really sick after working so much on the house. He was dizzy and had stress marks on his body, but it would be okay. Hannah came over for a visit to see Harvey's new house, and she fell in love. She couldn't believe how Harvey all by himself had built something so beautiful. At that moment, Hannah saw what a man Harvey was, and she fell in love. But Harvey didn't feel anything for Hannah. She looked around in the house and saw herself living there. She had no idea how to make Harvey fall in love with her. Why Harvey didn't feel anything for Hannah was because he couldn't. He was afraid of losing more people, that he just couldn't fall in love anymore. Hannah gave many hints that she wanted more from Harvey, but he never noticed. When Ruby grew older, she started to get long, beautiful hair, and she was a copy of her mother. It was scary for Harvey to see his sister in Ruby's little eyes. Even if Harvey had everything under control in the house, he was still a man. Sorry, but it's true. Hannah visited every day to see how everything was going, and when she heard that Adam had received the same food for 2 weeks now, she had enough. Hannah tried talking to Harvey that he had to get a wife, but he refused to listen to her. She knew nothing. Girls couldn't decide what men should or shouldn't do. Hannah then did something she would probably regret later. She kissed Harvey and took her clothes off. Harvey couldn't resist anymore, and well, they woohooed. Harvey was still not in love with Hannah, but what they just did was something he wanted more of. Year 1319. At the church, a wedding was being held. And who was the happy couple that was about to be husband and wife? It was no other than Hannah and Harvey. Not because of love, but because of legacy. Harvey didn't feel comfortable that he would spend the rest of his life with Hannah. She was beautiful, but only being with one woman for the rest of his life was not a lifestyle for him. And Hannah knew that. But she had just saved herself from being homeless. And if she had to carry Harvey's kids and raise them all by herself, so be it. It actually reminds me of when Cedric and Lisa got married. Except that Cedric loved Lisa more than anything. Harvey just woohooed Hannah every night and then went on with his own. Like his wife meant nothing to him. Hannah eventually found out after many times spent in the bed with her husband that she was pregnant. She wanted to tell Harvey, but he wasn't interested. He just said that it was probably for the best if Hannah stayed pregnant, so the legacy could grow bigger. But that was all. Thankfully, she loved being pregnant, knowing that a little baby was growing inside her. Ruby was just like her mother. She ran around everywhere and created chaos for Harvey. She played with the plants and made a big mess. Adam was a little jokester in the family. Everything turned to the better now that Hannah had moved in. She was funny and wasn't like the other grown-ups that Adam had met. He had spent many days by himself when his younger siblings died. No one to play with or talk to, so it made a big difference when Hannah moved in. Harvey's dream of running his own store was not far away now. He had been working really hard with the harvest on the farm itself, and now he wanted to start fixing his store. He made custom shelves where he would sell woodwork and his harvest. On the other side, he probably would fix a little eating area or maybe shelves for his stuff. Hannah got some space as well for her cross-stitching. That was pretty much all the family did for the rest of the year, creating things they could sell and finding new stuff that they could plant. It was peaceful for once. No one was sick or starving, and life for once felt okay again. Except for the fact that Harvey didn't love Hannah and that she soon would give birth to their first child. Hannah at least hoped Harvey would love their children. Something Harvey did like with Hannah was that she made all kinds of meals for the family. His stomach was full again, a feeling he hadn't felt for years. She also helped with Ruby when he had too much on his to-do list. So obviously Hannah was needed in the family. He just didn't love her as a partner. Finally, it was time for Hannah to give birth to her first child. The pain was awful, but she wasn't that scared to deliver a little baby. More exciting. She was a tough woman and she gave birth all by herself, without Harvey. And she did an amazing job, and out came a little boy. She went down with the baby to Harvey and asked what they should name him. And Harvey decided on the name Kevin Greenwood, the first boy in Generation 3.